What's up, everyone? Welcome to C&D Chats, a new segment we have here at C&D Sports. And we'll do this pretty semi-regularly where we take some different hot button topics all across the world of sports and we give our takes on it. We have some debates on it and just overall, just a more relaxing conversational type video for you as opposed to our more formal analysis videos here. So, a lot to talk about in the past few weeks in sports. What do you want to start with today?
All right, let's get right into it with some MLB talk. It's the AL MVP race. And when you have a guy like Shohei Ohtani that can play great, like an all-star on both ends, both pitching and hitting, but then you have Judge that's just very dominant as a hitter and a five-tool fielder. Where do you go with this?
And it's really tough because the MLB kind of set themselves up for, I don't want to say failure because I don't want to diminish what Shohei Ohtani's doing. Shohei Ohtani is a phenomenal talent on both sides of the ball. But the big issue I have is it's not like Shohei Ohtani's going to be up for in the top three for the Cy Young this year. And it's not like he is the best hitter in like a top five hitter in any major category in hitting this year that would put him, if he wasn't pitching, his hitting stats wouldn't put him in the top three for an MVP conversation. I mean, the fact that he's doing both is impressive, but I just think that comparing him to the historical season that Judge had, and some people are saying it's the greatest hitting season the MLB has ever seen. And there has been some fantastic hitters in the MLB. So to have that high praise from former veterans of the game, just analysts of the game that have seen everything, I'm with the opinion that you really have to give it to Judge. But at the same time, the MLB giving him the MVP last year, Ohtani had a better season this year. So how do you go out? So how do you go out and say that we gave you the MVP last year when there was an argument as well that it should have gone to Vlad Guerrero Jr.? Now, how do you justify Aaron Judge? Obviously, Aaron Judge had a better season than Vlad last year, so it's better competition for Ohtani. But I think there is a serious debate here, and in all honesty, there probably shouldn't be. It really should be Aaron Judge.
It should be Judge, but here's where it's tough because Ohtani literally is the most valuable player in the MLB because of what he does on both ends. So if you take the literal definition of the most valuable player, Ohtani is. And I agree with you because Judge is my pick. But that's where it gets tough, and it's almost like they need a separate award for this player. But if you do that, then he'd just win it every year because there's no player like him. So you have to give credit where credit is due in some way. But like you said, his stats aren't good enough to win an individual award elsewhere. But he's got to win something for what he does for the game.
He does, but does that mean year after year you give him the MVP? Because you look in the NHL right now, we all know that Connor McDavid is the most valuable player. If you look at season by season over the span of his career, he's been the most valuable player, not only to the Oilers, but to the NHL as a whole. Whereas Shohei Ohtani's that same thing, but Connor McDavid doesn't win the Hart Trophy every year.
No.
They've given it to Kucherov, they've given it to Austin Matthews over the years. So I'm not saying that Ohtani shouldn't win it again. I'm not saying that he wasn't worthy of the MVP last year. But if we are looking at in terms of value season by season, Ohtani might be the most valuable over his career. But this season, I would say Judge was probably more valuable than Ohtani in the sense that the Yankees were on a historical pace to start the year, where there were talks that if they keep winning at this pace, they could beat, the 1906 Cubs and the 2001 Seattle Mariners 116 win record. And he was leading that charge there. He came out of the gates kind of guns a-blazing there. And then after the All-Star break, when the Yankees really started to collapse and there was points where they were losing, I believe it was 12 games in a row, something, they lost double-digit games in a row and they were at their absolute lowest. The only guy that was still hitting was Judge. And he was the one that was almost single-handedly keeping them in the race when they did find ways to win games again. And he's really the reason why the Jays and the Rays didn't make that push. They certainly lessened the gap between first, second, and first, second, third, kind of that three-team gap there. They limited it, but Aaron Judge was the reason why the Yankees were able to sustain their pace, ultimately get that bye in the playoffs there, be one of the top two seeds, win their division. So I think this season, Aaron Judge was more valuable. But yeah, over the span of his career, you can compare Ohtani to a guy like Connor McDavid, where he will always be the most valuable guy, but guys will have more valuable seasons than, in this case, than Ohtani, which I believe Judge did this year with the historical hitting pace that he was on.
And that's fair. And yeah, the Angels, I mean, as a team, didn't really do much when you compare Angels Yankees. So
I also have a problem with defensively. Shohei Ohtani doesn't play defense unless he's on the mound, which is once every 5 days. Whereas Aaron Judge is well above average. He's a great defender. He was playing center field this year, which is not his normal position, but he was playing it better than a majority of everyday center fielders. And center field is a tough position to play, especially when you're 6'7". Not to mention Ohtani is also great on the base paths too. So I can't really pick one or the other on that end. But Shohei Ohtani is a DH and a pitcher, so he's playing defense once every 5 days. And I really think that you have to include defense when things get this close here. That's why Mike Trout has multiple MVPs, because he plays defense in center field, like very few outfielders and defensive players can. And I think that contributes to the whole wins above replacement, which is becoming more of a telling stat when it comes to picking an MVP. So I think the way that Aaron Judge dominated the offensive hitting side, but with the defense, and I think it's hard to really say that a DH should be up for MVP as well. David Ortiz doesn't have an MVP award. Edgar Martinez doesn't have an MVP award. And Edgar Martinez wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer when he went in. He made it in on the second year because there were doubts of whether whether a DH should belong in the Hall of Fame. That's why Yordan Alvarez this year, he had a great year, but he's not going to be in top three for MVP voting because he was a DH. Now, I get it. Ohtani pitches as well, and that makes him more eligible for an MVP. But you still have to address the fact that when he's playing, he's still really only a part-time player, even though he's getting regular at bats, but he's not playing in the field. And when he is playing in the field, it's once every 5 days. So I don't think he has that same workload that a guy like Aaron Judge will have. And I think that also makes Judge more deserving of the MVP.
okay, well, there you have it for the Judge Ohtani debate. I think it would be robbery if Judge didn't win.
Yeah. But let us know in the comments below what you think.
We'll see what the MLB does with it. Let's move on to the Draymond Green Jordan Poole incident. And for those of you that don't know, there was a little discussion in practice, and out of nowhere, Draymond Green just TKOs Jordan Poole. There's a
Full Superman punch.
full Superman punch, not a pretty picture. There's
No.
a lot to dive into. And let's start with, do you want to start with the contracts?
We'll start with the contracts. And I think I because it is stemming from the contracts in the sense that both of them are up for renewal. And the Warriors reportedly seem to be trending towards giving that money to Jordan Poole as opposed to Draymond Green, which has caused some tension. But specifically with Green, obviously, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of tension for Poole, considering that he is going to be getting the big payday playing for the defending champions in the Golden State Warriors. But when I first read it, I thought that Jordan Poole was letting that contract go to his head. And it was just how I read it was wrong. But it's actually the complete opposite. Jordan Poole has apparently he's become a lot more mature, it seems, and personality wise deserving of this contract. And I think that's where the shift has come, because the Warriors do feel he's earned that type of role to be that kind of part of that, what would be a new big three, alongside Steph Curry and Klay Thompson there. So I misread it as Jordan Poole was, just being a jerk. as opposed to no, he's being the complete opposite. It's actually Draymond. So that's why when I first saw it, I'm like, okay, it's just a scuffle like it was with Durant and Draymond Green back in the day. But it's actually the complete opposite that this is a side of Draymond that we see. Draymond is kind of this guy that the temper flares a little bit. He does kind of just make dumb moves, but this is a whole new side of Draymond that I didn't expect to see.
Yeah, not a pretty pitcher at all. So you consider the contracts and what's I mean, kind of iffy is in a couple days they're gonna have their championship celebration and all their parents, their family's gonna be in the house. That's gonna be just very awkward and uncomfortable. Now Draymond has apologized to both Jordan, his family, and the Warriors organization, but it's still gonna be, as he said, I believe, a cloud in the room. It's gonna hang over them. It's gonna loom over them and make that whole ceremony quite uncomfortable. What do you think about that?
Well, I think in terms of how this team is going to move past this, it certainly helps that Draymond Green has announced he is going to be taking an indefinite leave of absence from the team just to try to get things back to where they are. Obviously, there's some personal reflection there of what he wants for his future because this obviously didn't make that great impression when they are still. I do believe that it's probably not. Obviously, it's not sealed. Jordan Poole hasn't signed the extension yet, so there still is a shot that Draymond Green could be the guy that they opt to sign back. But it is still going to be there because Draymond's not going to be held out all year. He's too valuable of a player not to be there. Uh, so I doubt he's going to be at the ring ceremony. I think that's just too big of a moment, and it's too soon to bring him back for that. I think obviously you give him his ring. He's been to plenty of ring ceremonies before. He knows what it's like. Just give him his ring in private and just kind of let the team heal here because it's not great timing when the season begins in a few weeks to really have an incident like this occur. Um, and yeah, I want to like Draymond Green. I really do. I like his style of play. I like the fact that he's really embraced the villain role in the NBA and he almost likes it. He's the likable bad boy of the league, like a Charles Oakley kind of guy. But then he does stuff like this for no apparent reason. And you just kind of wonder, like when him and KD had that scuffle a few years ago where Draymond Green started yelling at him, it wasn't anything big. Like these things happen. There's been fistfights before, Michael Jordan punching Steve Kerr. It happens, but to the degree of like that was a wild punch. That was a UFC style knockout there. Like I've seen that on George St. Pierre. That was a Kamaru Usman kind of punch there, and that can't happen in the sense that this is still a guy that you have to go into the locker room every day and that you have to show up to work every day. Obviously, there's disagreements in any workplace, but full on full on trying to UFC knock this guy out. That's where a line is drawn that we haven't seen a whole lot of situations like this in the past in any sports, but especially in the NBA. So this is this is a problem that I think the Warriors, they're a world-class organization, so I don't doubt that they'll find a way to move past this. Draymond and Jordan Poole will be playing on the same court in the 2022-2023 season. I don't think it's going to be a long leave of absence, but again, it if it is, I'm sure the Warriors have a reason. That's why they've won 4 championships in the past 7 years.
Yep. And now let's move on to just a little bit of a look at the Brooklyn Nets heading into this season. Obviously, coming off of a disappointing season with Kevin Durant, Kyrie, they trade out Harden, they bring in Ben Simmons. What's the outlook for them going into 2022, 2023?
Yeah, because since we started the show back up, we haven't before we started it back up was when all the Kevin Durant saga of will he leave, will he stay, he wants out but now he wants back in. It's we didn't get to talk about that enough. So now as it stands, Kevin Durant is back, Kyrie Irving is still there, both of them are healthy. and should be ready to go on opening night. And now it just comes to the fact of, well, what does this Brooklyn Nets team look like? Because when you saw some of the moves that they were making when Kevin Durant wanted out earlier in the offseason, it geared up to more of a rebuilding focus. Like they were going to be trying to get a high lottery style pick. But now he's back. And I think they've made some moves since then that have helped. Obviously, bringing in guys like TJ Warren. You still have, like you mentioned, Ben Simmons there as part of that three. You have Seth Curry, Joe Harris, Nick Claxton still back. So you still have these role players on this squad that I think there's a solidified top five in the East that consists of the Sixers, the Celtics, the Heat, the Raptors, and the Bucks. And I think from 6 until 9, I think that's where we see there's going to be four teams battling for that last automatic playoff spot, um, which I think those four teams include the Brooklyn Nets, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Chicago Bulls. And I think all of them are capable of getting that sixth seed, but all of them are, more than capable of being a play-in style team. And that's where I see the Brooklyn Nets being, because I think they have depth. I just don't think it's as strong of depth as the five teams that we mentioned earlier that really do look like that big five. You could really consider it a big four if the Raptors do take a step back, because they took a huge step forward last year. So maybe you consider the Raptors in kind of five teams looking to get the fifth and sixth spots, but certainly being capable of playing teams. That's where I put the Brooklyn Nets. But it's just a matter of, can this team hold up in terms of off the court antics?
Yes.
Kevin Durant is very vocal off the court. Kyrie Irving, there's just something new with him every day, it seems. That his focus seems to be more and more diverted away from basketball. And can Steve Nash manage these personalities? Because that's come into question. That came into question last year. And I think it will certainly come into question this year, especially before Kevin Durant bought in, he wanted Steve Nash out. He wanted a management change as well. He wanted all of these things to really make it his own team. And are they able to look past that? It's very similar to that Golden State situation where they still have things internally to work out before the season starts. And I think that's what diminishes them from, the top four, top five teams. That I really think, for the most part, internally, all their guys are bought in. They're bought into the projects that they've built, and they should be able to move forward. Whereas the Brooklyn Nets, I think there's still some doubts, but again, you can't knock the talent with Kyrie Irving and with Kevin Durant. I think a big question will be Ben Simmons. What Ben Simmons are we going to see? He hasn't played. He hasn't played in over a year. So is this going to be the same Ben Simmons? Has he switched his game up to really kind of tackle the issues that he was facing in Philadelphia? And that's something that we have yet to see.
You know what? I will say though, these guys have looked cohesive
Mm-hmm.
season, so I think they're onto something. It's just a matter of them all buying in. So we'll see how it works for them going into this season. And wrapping up our basketball segment, we have to talk about the greatest NBA prospect since LeBron James and even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We have Victor Wembanyama, 7'2". He moves like a 6'5" shooting guard. He really has it all. What are your thoughts on this kid?
Well, you say 7'2", and his height varies. I've seen 7'4", I've seen 7'5". Like it's really tough to gauge how big this guy actually is, but it's not hard to gauge how talented he is. He again, I've seen many comparisons to him. I consider him a taller Giannis Antetokounmpo with a jump shot. I think Giannis has those ball handling skills. I think he's comfortable defensively, but I don't think Giannis has that shot. Whereas Victor Wembanyama, he probably has the shooting similar to Kristaps Porzingis, who's another guy similar to his size. Uh, but I also don't want to make that Kristaps comparison, similar to how LeBron James put it. You can't consider Victor Wembanyama a unicorn because there's always a unicorn in every draft. They've really used that term since Kristaps came in. LeBron James called him more of an alien. Like this is something we've never seen before. He has that style of play it's really just revolutionary and just game changing. And yeah, he certainly is the best prospect since LeBron James. I don't really want to compare him to LeBron James because I feel like that's unfair to Victor Wembanyama, who hasn't played a game in the NBA. And obviously, he is the most highly touted prospect since James. I think there's been a guy. You even look at Zion Williamson, who probably was the last prospect to have this much fanfare, but he didn't have that much fanfare this early. There was still a debate on whether RJ Barrett could overtake him for that number one seed. Whereas I think it's open and shut that Victor Wembanyama is going 1-1. He's the first unanimous 1-1 probably since Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, his game is just ridiculous. And to think that he came over to the US. Obviously, he's playing in France right now, comes over to the US for that showcase in front of NBA scouts, in front of a ton of current and former NBA players, and just casually drops 35.
Yeah.
That's he is truly, like LeBron says, he is an alien. This is a guy that, we haven't seen a guy play like this before. But now the question comes, who's going to tank for them? Because that's Adam Silver's worst nightmare right now.
Yes. And well, I look at it this way: is the NBA, they have their stars, but they've been looking for the one above all.
Yeah.
I think this guy is a legitimate shot at taking that torch from LeBron James. Because you
Yeah.
have a Giannis, you have Luca,
Mhm.
but they're not that much further beyond their peers. I think this guy can do it.
I think he can, and he is the perfect player to transition into this positionless game that the NBA is right now. You can put him comfortably against centers. You can move him to the four. You can put this guy similar to what the Raptors were doing with Scotty Barnes, what the Brooklyn Nets do with Kevin Durant, where he can come up and he can handle up the floor and command the offense. He's got that, defensive intensity that, some small forwards have. He really is, in baseball, you have five tool players. He's a five tool player in basketball where he does everything exceptionally well. And again, it's the only other player we've seen do that is probably LeBron James. It's probably Michael Jordan. And those are unfair comparisons to make to him now. But his potential is certainly, to be one of the greatest players to ever do it, which is high praise for a guy that, again, just a kid from France.
Mhm.
This is something that I think is definitely exciting for the NBA. Certainly excited for European basketball to have Luka Doncic and now Victor Wembanyama come out there. It certainly looks better for the European game, and will certainly grow. It's certainly great for the NBA to grow the sport internationally as well. Is that something that hasn't been talked about enough with Victor Wembanyama? That there are endless potentials for the league and endless potentials for this guy to really grow beyond just the game of basketball and to just be a overall star.
All right. And before we close out the show, I've got a little quiz for you, Caleb.
Oh,
I
I
have
love a good quiz.
I have three actors for you, and I'm gonna have you guess their age. And so I guess we'll go from oldest to youngest. So you'll guess them. I'm just gonna give you their names. You give
Okay.
oldest to youngest, and give me a guess what you think their age is. Cool.
Okay.
All
Cool.
right. We've got Chris Hemsworth,
Yeah.
Henry Cavill, and Andrew Garfield.
Okay. So I have to guess their age, or do I have to order them from oldest to youngest?
Go ahead and do both.
Okay. So I think the oldest out of them would be, I'm going to go Andrew Garfield, probably the oldest.
Okay.
I'm going to put Andrew Garfield at around, I'm going to say Andrew Garfield 36, Henry Cavill 34, Chris Hemsworth 33.
Okay. The order is Henry Cavill, Chris Hemsworth, and Andrew Garfield.
Andrew Garfield's the youngest.
But they're all 39.
They're all 39 years old.
Could not believe that when I saw it.
Wow.
Yeah.
39 years old. I I can't. I'm trying to think of if I could kind of see it in anyone. I can't. Wow.
Yeah.
What a way to end the what a way to end the show here. That one blew my mind.
Well, there you have it. Thanks for watching. Fun episode going through all these different sports. We'll continue to do that. Continue to go through the MLB playoffs, the NHL season, maybe some more basketball as things progress. We'll go wherever the world takes us. Stay tuned, like, subscribe, share. See you next time. All right.
I did not expect that.